voice 17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. Greetings, my friends, and salutations. Welcome again to the Richard James Show. You know, it's Black History Month, and we're at the very, very last day of the month. It's 28 days in Black History Month. And so today we're going to talk about Black history, but we're focusing in on one particular family, one that we have uplifted before, one who has accomplished much, one that has gone through barriers of all kinds and come out on the other end extremely successful. We're talking about the Jackson family. Now, the Jackson family, where I know them, is the city of Chester, Pennsylvania. But you know, their roots are similar to mine. Their roots started in Georgia, the Peach State. And they have accomplished much, but we're only going to do one phase of the many accomplishments today of the Jackson family. We're going to talk about the military. And if I'm wrong, correct me, out of 11 brothers, 7 of them were in the military and accomplished much. And there's no way you can be Black and in any American institution, particularly the military, and not face barriers and not get past obstacles. And so what I'm going to do is introduce, and I'm going to allow these brothers whom I know and I love, and I've declared myself an honorary Jackson, because when I was growing up, if you give us a problem, I'll let them know that the Jacksons are over there on 8th Street. So don't mess with me, because I'll tell Dula, or I'll tell Tom, and we take care of your butt. These folks were brilliant. They made a lot of accomplishments, major accomplishments in life. And I'm so blessed and honored to know them. And I'm going to let them coordinate this presentation because they have the information. And I want to thank God for them. I want to thank them for coming on the Richard James Show because I'm so proud of them and I love them so much. And my good friend and brother Antonio Jackson, I'm gonna turn over the lease over to him to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Brother Richard. It is a pleasure to be on the show with you and 3 of my siblings, actually 2 today. I'm here at home in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and I have on my wife's scrub. But we wanted to begin this program with a prayer and a song by Eric. It's going to be impromptu. He didn't know that I was going to ask him to do this, but he's a very accomplished singer, thespian, and a lot of other things. And he's a pastor. And I know he's always prepared and he's always on time. So Eric, if you can begin the program with a song and a prayer, or a prayer and a song, whatever order you think is appropriate.
Well, certainly prayers is in order. So let us begin. Gracious God, our Father, we just want to thank you just for another day to be among the land of the living, God, to have brought us from the womb to this particular time in our life. We thank you, God, for this season. God, a season for eagles. God, we are eagles. Hallelujah, God. We have gone through, we have gone around, and we have gone above storms, oh God. But even as the word declares in Isaiah 40:31, that we shall mount up like wings of an eagle. We shall run and not walk, and faint, walk and not faint. So God, we thank you, God, you allow us to continue, God, to move through life, oh God. We thank you for the legacy of family. We thank you, God, for Brother Richard Jones and the platform and brother on this voice show to present, just to share, oh God, how we've come, oh God, from parents who were sharecroppers in the 1930s to come north, God, and to continue to excel. And allow us to be a part of leaving legacies to others wherever we have been in the military in particular. So God, we thank you for this moment, for this time. And God, we'd be remiss if we didn't honor our parents, our natural parents, hallelujah, that who taught us, oh God, how to be humble, how to have humility. And that came from Matthew 6, chapter the 9th to the 13th verses. And so, God, we thank you. And so we just want to open, oh God, with that prayer that they taught us every night at the foot of the bed. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Sound like Lucius Jackson, our Father. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, thanks, Eric.
Amen.
Thank you.
Are you at home
I am, yes.
in Harrisburg?
I am in Harrisburg, yes.
And Louis, you're in Colorado. You're in Denver, Colorado today. Is that right?
Well, Aurora,
Oh yeah, which is
Aurora.
very close by to
Yeah.
And I
Denver.
guess I should say Middletown, but Harrisburg, vicinity.
Denver, you're right. Continue.
Okay.
Continue.
Anyway, the way we would like to do this program this afternoon is to talk about the 7 veteran brothers, and we'd like to begin by talking about one of our second oldest brother, Thomas Lee Jackson, who joined the Marines at a very, very early age. And I think he served one tour and then he got out. And unfortunately, we don't know that much, or at least I don't know that much about my brother Tom, because I was quite a young child at the time that he went in. Of course, I've heard some of the things that he did when he was in. And so we have limited knowledge about Tom's experience. I've seen photographs of him standing at attention in his dress, the Marine clothing. And I remember times when he would come home and in his uniform, and he was rimrod straight and just had that tough, strong U.S. Marine demeanor to him. And I would ask my 2 brothers who were on, Louis and Eric, if they can share any thoughts that they may have about Tom, his experience in the Marines, or even after he got out of the Marines. So Louis or Eric, do you have anything you want to say about our next to the oldest brother, Thomas Lee? By the way, Thomas Lee died in his mid-50s. At the time, he was living in Ambler, Pennsylvania.
Yes. I'll give deference to Brother Lou Jack. to kick things off, and I'll fill in as I remember him
Right.
afterwards.
Okay, yeah, he was the first of us to go to college. At the time, it was Cheney State. And from there, he did all types of things. He was a photographer. He was a boxer, martial arts. And we all was following in his footsteps as far for all of his accomplishments that he had done. One of the first, he was in theater. He did a lot of plays. And Eric and Will, our other deceased brother, military, he also did theater. So all three of them did. I did a little myself at the church,
That's right.
you know. So we did those. He was very athletic. Again, as we all happened to be, it was just in our genes. We did those things.
Yes.
And very likable individual. I mean, he was like gravitated to. The people loved him, you know. And it was unfortunately his early retirement, you know, through life. Again, he loved the Marines. However, I don't know the reason why he got out, but he did. And so if you could fill in some, Eric, while I think back of anything I missed about him.
Yes. So being number 9 of the 11 boys, and actually number 10, we always talk about my mother birthed 14 children. And so, but I'm glad that I was old enough to remember our brother Thomas Lee Jackson, chiseled. You know, back in those, I guess in the 60s and 70s, I guess when I was in high school, and the 50s for him, it wasn't a whole lot of weightlifting going on. And as Brother Lou mentioned, you know, I guess the genes, maybe that come from, you know, Pop lifting those logs down there in Georgia, in the turpentine and lumber folks. But Tom was, I use the word Renaissance, the original Renaissance man. As Lou mentioned, he played chess. He did judo, karate. I remember him taking us to softball games. He and his friend Jinx, I think, drove a Volkswagen Beetle from the U.S. to Mexico and back. And I can't forget about this Tony Galenso, this bus that was there at the house that we always looked at. And then there's a poem called Desi Desiderata, which the first line says, "Go ye placidly." That always hung somewhere in the house, and it eventually made its way to the boys' bedroom. But when I think about Tom, and several years ago, I started to write. I didn't know it was a script. I didn't know anything about master shot and close-up shots, anything about film. But I imagine him being at Cherry Point and hearing the cadence as they marched. And I had known about the situation of, with regards to his marriage while he was there at Cherry Point. And I remember him coming home and having to go, you know, just get some counseling regarding that experience. But I saw a paying shot coming in, and the guy said, "Hey, come on, Tom, come and play with us, do some pool." So, "Nah, man, you know I got a family, man, and kids." So he went on over to the house and so forth. Maybe one day we'll collaborate on writing that. But yeah, Tom was definitely, he kicked things off, as was mentioned, about going to Cheney State Teachers College, that eventually did end up, after he finished, and he came back out and did several things, especially photography, but he ended up going to Temple University and for elementary education. And I saw some papers in the basement of the house that we grew up in, 1020 West 8th Street, where he was very active with veterans and getting benefits for them at Temple University in the 60s. And very meticulous writing. I remember his writing was very neat. You know, I think he was in industrial arts and printing, as you were, Lou, back in the day. but yeah, we'll say more about Tom as the show goes on. But he definitely left an indelible mark in my mind. I'm sure all the family
Mhm.
and all the lives that he touched as he passed his way.
I wanted to note that one of the common themes or experiences that you'll hear about this afternoon is the martial arts. Several of us were into the martial arts, studied the martial arts, and Tom was the first, as far as I know. And I remember I used to look at his fists,
Yeah.
his knuckles, and he had these calluses on the muscles,
Yeah.
on the knuckles, and you knew that if he hit somebody, it was going to be trouble. So they were definitely deadly weapons. And as was mentioned, Tom was a boxer, and we used to go up the street on Lloyd Street in Chester and watch Tom box. Some of it, he won some, but he didn't win all of them. But he was known for being a tremendous boxer as well. But I had the fortune of living with Tom after I finished high school. I decided I wasn't going to go straight to college. I was going to take a year off. They call it a gap year now. And some people were concerned that I was going to not go to college after taking a year off, but I knew what I wanted to do. And Tom invited me to live in his apartment building, and there was another apartment. There was an apartment on the third floor, and so I had an opportunity to live with him. It was in Powelton Village, and some of you may be in the audience may be familiar with the MOVE organization. Before they moved over to the 52nd Street, West Philadelphia area. But the MOVE group was lived very close to where Tom and I lived. But yeah, Tom was also known, as was mentioned, for his acting ability. He was a tremendous actor. And for me in particular, he changed my life in that he used to be the van driver for the WADE program. And I think Richard was familiar with that program.
Yes.
He used to be the van driver, and he would drive students from Chester, the city of Chester, to Swarthmore College for academic enrichment. And Tom thought that I would benefit from that program. And one time he came home and said, "Tony, you should check out the WADE program," which eventually became the Swarthmore College Upward Bound program.
Yes.
And I joined the program when I was in 8th grade, and it just changed my world. So I have to give Tom a lot of credit for providing that opportunity for me. Unless one of the other brothers has something else to say about Tom, I'm going to move on to Lou. Put you on the spot, Lou. You're the next in line as far as age. You talk about your experience. I know you went to Vietnam, and you were in Turkey and Washington, D.C. and Colorado. You've traveled quite a bit during your military career. And in fact, you were the only one of us to do
55.
20 years active duty. I know Eric did 20 plus years as a guard, but Lou, you did 20 years active, more than 20 years actually, as an active duty veteran. So can you talk about your military experience, Lou, why you went in and what branch you were in?
Well, it was back when I grew up in the projects. And then we moved out of the projects to 8th Street.
It was at Lamoken Village, right?
Moken Village. In Moken Village, call it the LV. Very interesting place. Had my schools through public schools in Pennsylvania, in Chester, Pennsylvania, Delaware County. Moving on from elementary, junior high, and high school, Chester High, where we went to school. And Richard James' brother Curtis and I, after we had graduated, and another gentleman, a friend of ours, the three of us instead of the getting drafted, we made a pact and went over to the selected service and said we want to join the Air Force. So they
Right,
said,
right.
okay, and this was in June. They say, well, when you guys want to go? We say, well, let's November. So November it was, and we were going to go in together. Well, I was in printing, and I tried to get a job around the area in printing, couldn't get one in Philly. So my brother Tom was in Jersey, him and my cousin. And so I went to stay live with them for about a month. And I didn't do anything over there either. So I got a call that said, hey, recruiter's been around the house looking for you. I said, for what? They said, they want to go to the military. So I said, well, hey, okay. So when I came back home, the last part of July, I went over to the office and they said, Mr. Jackson, one of you guys had been selected to go into the Air Force next month, which was the 9th of August. And I figured it was going to be one of my friends. I said, hey, no problem. And they said, no, it's you. I said, but it's supposed to be November. They said, no, it's August. So, okay. I wasn't working anything. So I said, I'll give it a try. So that's how I got into the Air Force. And I did my basic training at Lackland. And from Lackland, went to technical school in Amarillo, Texas, and graduated in December of '63. And from there, I was assigned to Peterson Air Force Base. That was my first station here. And started out as a supply intern and then graduated on up. So Cheyenne Mountain, I don't know if you guys are aware, heard of it, it's NORAD Air Defense Command. I used to work in the mountain in 1966. And I said, well, I didn't particularly care to work inside because it's down in the dungeon. It's in the granite rock. You know, that's one of our centers there. And so let me back up prior to that, in '64, I was playing sports. I played football and basketball. And every base that I went to, I was on their base team. I was pretty good. However, I didn't play ball in school. I will digress. We had a place in our neighborhood called The Cage, which
Yes.
Richard is pretty familiar with. And at The Cage, this is where you learn your skills in basketball. And our skills were so good, and the people and the basketball players, pros loved it so much, they would come to Chester and play against the people that went to Chester High School, where we all went. Majority of us. Richard went, I went.
Yes.
And we had, like Wally Jones from, Sixers, Earl LaPearl, Monroe come up from Baltimore. At the time, Lou Alcindor, before he became Abdul-Jabbar, he came and, Richard even had taken him down there. He wanted to play ball. But this is where I started out as, because I just played 1 year junior high in high school. But, my skills was there. So they said, man, where'd you play at? Cage. Where is that?
What college you play, they thought.
So that's how I got started on there and then going in tournaments and I like playing because you get out of work and people look at me and say, hey, Jackson, where you going? I say, well, I got to go practice at the gym, man, because we going out of town. We got games, Florida, California. So anyhow, from the mountain in 1966, I said, I got to get out of here because I can't take it. So I say, well, I joined the Air Force to see the world. So I say, well, France, England, Spain, it's all the good places people was talking about.
Right.
So I say, well, I'm gonna put in for these. And the older guy said, young blood, don't do it. I said, no, I'm going, man. I said, okay. I put my paperwork in. 3 weeks later, Vietnam. So we told you, we told you. So I said, okay, well, I can't do nothing about it now. So off I went and went to training in California. Before we went over, we had to go to train on the weapons. So I got there in February '67. It's called Bear Base. When they just took over the base, captured it from the enemy about 6 months. So, you know, they cared what branch of service you were, ground, pound, or foot, whatever, you had to do whatever you had to do. And we lived in tents, slept on cots, had to put guard duty. All the things that infantry soldiers would do just about. So that went on for about 6 months before they came in, and they built the runway to bring in the aircraft. And when they did that, that's when they started lobbing. So for recreation, we had Bob Hope come over, and we had a base team in Vietnam. And we had a tournament in Saigon, '68. And we played, we went to Saigon and played. We played outside. And during that time, that's when they called the campaign, it was Tet season, where all of the bases will be attacked at one time. When we finished ball, they had bombed their court. So on our way back to our respective bases, they were under attack. So planes had to turn around, come back to Saigon. I got on the aircraft and flew into Quy Nhon by the coast. And my base was about 20 miles, but you couldn't travel unless you were in with a convoy. And so the Korean, they call them the Rock Marines, they were tough. So I caught a ride with them back to my base. And after that tour in Vietnam, I went to DC, Washington, DC, and I was in communication squadron from '68 to about '74. And in between there, I had come back to Laurie Air Force Base and did more training after I got promoted.
Mhm.
That's where I met my wife. And we got married in 1972. So it's been 50 years now.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen
Hallelujah.
to that.
Yes.
Now, when were you in Turkey?
Amen.
Was that before or after you got married?
That was after I got married, because that was in, like I said, from '68 to '74. In between that time, I got married in '72. And then we went back.
How long were you in Turkey?
I was in Turkey about 15 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
What can you tell us briefly about that experience living in Turkey?
Oh, it was tough. Turkey, during that time, the Turks and the Greeks, they had been feuding for a while, and I guess they still are somewhat.
They're still feuding.
Yeah, and the base was, we had to live they lived in Quonset huts. Some people had their family there. And I said, well, I didn't want to subject my family to the conditions. So I said, well, I just stay over here. If you brought your family over, you had to stay 24 months. So if you did the tour by yourself, it was 15 months. So I said, well, I'll do the 15 and leave there, and so they can go to school there, because it was pretty tough. The electricity would go out, and we just had problems over there.
Did you have any earthquakes in Turkey while you were there?
Not at the time I was there, no.
And do you know where the location, where the recent earthquake, how far away? You know where exactly that occurred?
Yeah, it occurred at the base I was at.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It's called Adana, Turkey. Yeah, that's where I was stationed at. Yeah.
Did you come home midway during the 15-month tour? Were you able to come home for a week or two?
No, didn't. Nope.
Now, there was a guy
The
from
whole thing.
Chester. You saw a guy from Chester over in Turkey, or did you? Is that right?
Right. Richard, did you know the Samuels, Lanny Samuels?
What's the name?
Lanny Samuels. He had an older sister. I can't remember her first name, but the last name was Samuels.
I don't remember right off, Luke. I don't remember.
Well, anyhow, he and I went through grade school and junior high all together. And I ran into him. He was in the barracks. I stayed in one of the barracks, and I went up to the third floor, and I seen this gentleman. He was playing cards with these dark glasses.
Uh-huh.
He looked familiar. So I went over to him and I looked at him. I said, Lanny Samuels, Lou Jackson, yeah. So we gave our, dap and greeting, and the guy was saying, sit down and play cards. And he said, shut up, this is my homie. We haven't seen each other. And we used to compete
I
in
heard that.
track and all when I was there with Mr. Jones. He was our track coach, and Lanny and I was always competing and all. And speaking of track, I went to Penn Relays twice
All right.
in high school. And then after,
Middle distance of what, half mile, quarter mile.
Quarter mile and half mile. Yeah, those were my races.
And probably 2 mile relay. You ran a leg on a 2 mile relay.
Yeah, sure did. In the mile relay, what they call a silver baton during that time. So,
Well, you also did flag football when you were in the military too, right?
Yeah, flag football in Colorado Springs. We played against the Army and all, toy drive to raise money and toys for the kids. And during that time, we had regular equipment, not like they play now. We had everything except a helmet. I don't know why we didn't have helmets. We had shoulder pads, hip pads, and all. And you can actually body cross and reach for the flag.
Yeah.
But they kind of got out of that because
didn't you make like all like base team or all military or something in flag football? Am I mistaken about that?
No,
I recall recall reading some write-ups about your accomplishments doing flag football.
Yeah, doing flag football, I was a wide receiver and a defensive back. Made the base team, all-star team. Flag football, basketball.
So you made the all-star team then.
Right. And the basketball
okay.
all-star team,
Wow.
team, which we played against.
Wow.
We played against the Army Fort Carson. These guys the Army had guys that were playing in college and getting ready to go to pros. We had to play against them. We won one of the tournaments called 5-Star Tournament. Army, Air Force Academy at the time.
So you were point guard, left-handed point guard. They couldn't.
They know what was going on. Listen, something's funny
Lou,
about this guy.
Lou, I'm gonna move on to Flick, so we have a couple more brothers to get through.
Oh, okay.
And,
All right.
Thank you.
And I know that
Thank you.
we're not going to have a lot to say about Flick. Flick died a couple years ago of pancreatic cancer.
2019.
He did one tour in the Army, and he was drafted, and he became a 10th degree. I'm probably exaggerating. Black belt.
No, you're right. I think it was 5th or 6th.
Sixth degree, and he also was inducted into the Pennsylvania International Martial Arts Hall of Fame in near Pittsburgh, and many of the family members were able to go there and share that experience with him and his wife. He has a son, Brian, and 2 stepdaughters, and he's married to Ann, who's still living, and we keep in contact with her. But Flick was in the Army, and he went to Okinawa. And as a matter of fact, while he was in the Army, he and Lewis had a chance to hook up. Lou, you want to share that story briefly?
Yeah, he was at the Army base, Fort Carson here in Colorado Springs. And that was in December 66. And he was getting ready to go to Okinawa, and I was going to Vietnam. And we got a chance to get together for a while. And I told the guys when they come downtown to, hey, take care of my brother and his friends, and so he, when he went to Okinawa, he was a welder, and he was making the shields for 50 caliber machine guns.
Mhm.
Um, that's what he did when he came back. He did welding and all. But yeah, it was nice to have him for about a month, together. He, his friends and mine, Army, Air Force together, you know.
Did you and Flick talk about his, I mean, after he got out, or even while he was in, do you know what kind of experience he had while he was in the Army overall, or in particular?
No, sure don't. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Flick became he became a union head in sheet metal work. And
Right.
he helped build a lot of the major buildings in the Philadelphia area. He used to
Mhm.
drive up from Chester to these construction sites, and he was in the construction field, the sheet metal field in particular, for what, over 30 years.
Yeah,
Right.
about 37.
And he really enjoyed doing sheetrock, and I'm not sheetrock, sheet metal.
You
And
remember?
we used to call on Flick whenever we had an issue with we needed some home improvements and stuff. I mean, not only could he do sheet metal, but he could do home improvement work as well. But Flick, again, as I said, he started Taekwondo, Okinawan style karate in the military, and when he got out, he continued with it and got advanced degrees. And he actually had a class for the youngsters, a karate class at his church, and he was dedicated to that class and to those youngsters. And he actually exposed me to Taekwondo. I studied Taekwondo for a brief period of time until I re-injured my knee from a high school football injury. But Flick was a real taskmaster with the martial arts.
And teaching you to drive. Same way if he was teaching you to
Yeah,
drive.
yeah.
Same way.
He also taught me how to drive, right? I remember one time he was teaching me how to drive up near Showwater Junior High, Richard. And
Yeah, where I live.
yeah, on 10th Street, which was, a lot of open road. There wasn't too much traffic on 10th
That's
Street.
right. That's right.
And so that was a good place to teach someone how to drive. And I remember one time I was driving and somebody was behind me and they passed me. And Flick said, "Stop the car." Stop the car. Flick ran around the car, got a can, and saw the closest thing he could find on the ground and throw it at the car because the guy passing me inappropriately. But that was the kind of person that Flick was. He would give you the shirt off his back.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's not an exaggeration. I think he literally gave. The other thing I wanted to mention, since we're talking about Flick now, we're going to go to Will next. But one of the other things, in addition to the martial arts, is buying clothing in the Asian countries where they traveled. I know that Flick had clothes tailor made. Lou, did you do that too when you were in Nam or Turkey?
Yeah, I went to Hong Kong when they had the silk suits and monogram shirts with the initials on the top. Yeah, that's what everybody was doing. But
So
one thing about Flick and his prowess for the martial arts, 53 straight years, nonstop, 53.
Mm.
He was dedicated. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure was.
Now, I know we have some photos, but that we wanted to share at some point, but I think what I'll do, Reverend Thomas, is to maybe wait until we get through the rest of the brothers before we share those if we have any time. I think we may. But I wanted to move on to our brother Will, or Lucius. His nickname was Will. He was drafted also into the Army. And unfortunately, we don't know a lot about his military experience. I do know that he spent at least a year in Korea And
At
I
Fort
know
Bliss.
he was in Fort Bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that he had a Korean girlfriend for a while. He used to talk about that. But Will used to have the tailor-made, the silk suits made too.
I received some. I got 2 or 3 hand-me-downs and took them to college with me.
I don't know if he had anything made for mom or our sisters or anything like that. But
Yeah, I think all the brothers did.
like Flick, Will was a very, very, very giving young man. He was like Tom. He was an actor also. I saw him in a couple plays. He was just I saw him. He also was a member of the Lions Club, the Swarthmore Lions Club. I think he integrated the Lions Club out of Swarthmore.
Right. He did.
Became president. He became the president.
became president, yeah. But Will has a son, Shamir, who lives in Delaware, and a granddaughter. Unfortunately, he died of essentially a stroke when he was in his mid-50s. He had high blood pressure, and he was at the vet with his dog Samson. And after he left the vet, he passed out, had an aneurysm. And when the EMT came to assist him, his dog Samson wouldn't allow anyone to touch him. And I don't know if they had to tranquilize Samson or they somehow had to get him away.
Mm-hmm.
But Will survived for maybe a month after the stroke, and he started getting better, and he actually started talking. And I think he had a tracheotomy, and they took that off and put a mask on him, and he died within 24 hours after that. But Will was like Flick. He was serious about his martial arts, not as serious as Flick, but Will had he had all kinds of interests.
Yeah.
He was particularly interested in jazz and spirituality and women. He loved women. Well, actually, all the Jackson brothers, I can't think of any one of them who didn't love women. That's one of the things also, Richard. I guess we took after our dad, I don't know. But anyway, you guys want to say anything else about Will?
Yeah, let me just say real quickly, in particular, since this is African American History, Black History Month, what I remember, and Lou may have been the recipient of some of these letters, that when he was at Fort Bliss, he gave thought to crossing the border from Fort Bliss into Mexico, like coming back. And even when he got to Korea for that tour, he didn't have a real good experience as far as dealing with, superiors there. And although he had whooped everybody, when he came home, he was breaking boards and knife handed and sword hand, everything that same day he came home. And he was very, lack of a better word, militant. We were glad he came home. He even talked about the possibility of, at one point, he was going to jump on a machine gun and just take out whoever he could and just know that he would be taken care of. But it was that kind of pressure going on. And I think he dealt with that even when he came. We didn't deal with it as post-traumatic syndrome at the time. I know local Muslim group was trying to get him. And of course, then eventually he went to college and went on to get his master's in counseling. But Will, yeah, he always say, and I was saddened when he passed because that was a year I took my first mission trip to Kenya. And I wanted to bring him something back from Africa because he was the one that introduced many of us to earth oils and bracelets and necklaces. And so I said, well, I'm going to bring him something back from the motherland and bring it back to him. And, but yeah, one other thing with the martial art experience, when he was in Korea, as I said, he whooped everybody, the Koreans, the soldiers. And that's one picture of him breaking a high stack of tiles. But because of the mindset he was in there in Korea, he didn't go downtown where he would have received his black belt. He just stayed a red belt. I mean, he had all the qualifications. but he said he didn't want his hands, the government, to be control of his hands. They would have been licensed. And in fact, someone tried to use that in a situation later on when he got out. But yeah, he had some experiences. You may remember my doing a eulogy for his homegoing service, and the topic of that was I talked about a minefield, that his head was like a minefield, you know, most of his life. I mean, he played football, he went to Widener Theater and so forth. But again, many didn't know about what PTSD was, and they get help with that. And I'm just grateful to have spent the time riding in the car to Philadelphia with him. Like I said, being introduced to African culture, going over to Widener University to watch him run and play football with Billy White Shoes Johnson, who went on with the Houston Oilers. But yeah, he was definitely a, as we all were, as I stated about younger brother Dennis, all of us have given so much to one another to make one another who we are. We can take a piece from each person. So I'm grateful for both Flick and Tom and Will.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit. We don't have a lot of time left, and we still have to get through myself, Eric, and Chris. Unfortunately, Chris couldn't be on the program. He's living in Chester. He was in the Air Force. I'll talk about him right now. Chris was in the Air Force. He enlisted. He graduated from Penn State. He became a member of the Mega Phi Psi fraternity. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, Mega Psi Phi.
Right?
Mega Psi Phi. Mm-hmm.
Mega Psi Phi. Right, Mega Psi Phi. I always get that twisted. But in any case, yeah, as I said, Chris spent time in Korea when he was in the Air Force. And he actually spent time in Colorado Springs with Lewis once he got out. But to be honest, he didn't have a very good military experience. Probably some of the same issues that all of us, when I say all of us, I'm talking about the 7 veteran brothers, with racism.
Yeah.
Racism was strong when we were in, it was strong before we joined.
Yeah.
And it remains strong.
Yeah.
And you know, the whole history, if you really talk about the history of the African American experience with the military, is not very good. Of course, we weren't even allowed to be in combat. Not that necessarily would have been a good thing, but it was because of this attitude that we were inferior. We would be inferior fighters, that we lacked intelligence to be leaders, and et cetera, which brings me to my own experience. I joined the Air Force after college. And one of the reasons that I had joined is because I thought I would benefit from the discipline, because I was the kind of person who wasn't the most disciplined. And I knew that the military would help me with that. And although I had a bachelor's degree and could have, pursued an opportunity to be an officer, I decided I didn't want to go that route, because I had already been accepted to the University of Pennsylvania, a master's program. And I said to myself that I'll go in, enlisted, and once I get my master's degree, then it'll be easier for me to get an officer, the officer level. But in any case, when I was I did my basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, which is where most of us, I think that's the only Air Force base for basic training. And I was very fortunate that while I was in, I became the squadron, well, actually the flight leader for the entire squadron in basic training. They had tried about 3 or 4 other guys before me, and all of them couldn't handle it. And so they waited, they saved the best for last, I guess. But I was very fortunate that I was able to retain that position until we completed basic training. And I was able to become a marksman, surprisingly, I don't have the best vision now. And I also was a basic training honor graduate. And then when I went to tech school at Shepherd's Air Force Base in Texas, I became an honor graduate in tech school. I say that with some humility because, to be honest, I was probably certainly when I went in basic training, I was one of the older members in my unit, and I was one of the more educated. So, and I knew that, and I think some other, the powers that were, the superiors, they knew, and some of my fellow personnel, they were aware of that also. But I had a good experience in the Air Force overall. I let the powers that were know that I was interested in becoming an officer, but they were not having it. And I remember after I got my law degree, I contemplated becoming a JAG officer, which would have been a fairly easy transition, but I decided that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, because it would have meant a commitment if I went as a reserve officer, traveling to either Andrews Air Force Base, which was about a 3-hour drive each way, or going to Langley and Virginia Beach would have been another 3-hour drive. So that was one of the reasons I didn't do it. But I got a chance to travel. I went to Mississippi and spent time, traveled to New Orleans while I was down there. I was at Warner Robins in Macon, Georgia. I got a chance to go down to Andrews Air Force Base. And I don't know if Lou was there when I went. Lou may have been there. We may have hooked up when I was down there. Andrews Air Force Base in DC. And I also went to Upper Heyford in England. And we had war games with NATO when I was over there. And there were simulated casualties that we had to process. And lo and behold, there was a guy from Chester who was a casualty that I had, a simulated casualty that I had to process. And it made me appreciate the fact that in the real world, that's what would happen. You know, you see people
what was
that you
your
knew.
AFSC, Tony?
Pardon?
What was your AFSC in the air?
Well, I was in health administration. Yeah. So Eric, let's talk about you. We only have about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, we may have to do a part 2. So I joined, I watched different brothers join the military. And so at age 33, I started looking at different militaries, and I wasn't going in for a GI Joe reason. I was going to get a technical skill because I've been teaching for several years. And so 2 days before I would have been too old, I swore in January 12th, 1992. And 2 days later, I turned 35. And they didn't call me to basic training until November of the year, November 12th or 13th of 92. And I had a similar experience. There was a young man from Pittsburgh. He was 18 years old, who Robert Marshall, who was the dorm chief, equivalent to like a flight leader at the time. And when the drill instructor came in, he said that I was being, that, how's it go? Oh, he said I was being soft when I was the dorm chief. So he gave it to him. I was the dorm chief first. And he stayed about 2 days and he gave it back. And so I ended up doing that. But make a long story short, so yeah, I meant to do 6 years because that makes you a veteran status as an Air National Guard every weekend, one week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year. And ended up doing 24 years and was grateful to be able to do some traveling. And my last 2 tours, as you know, I was the superintendent of the Chapel Annex in Kyrgyzstan, and in 2009 and 10 was a big war with the Taliban. And so we were processing folks from different countries coming through the Chapel Annex. But I want to say this, that every place I went, this being again African American History Month, every place pretty much I went. If it was more than 2 weeks, I was going to do something. If it was a long deployment, I was going to do something theater-wise or music-wise, whether it was in a forward operating base in Afghanistan or stopping through for just a weekend at the Azores in Portugal. But it was a great experience. I joined again because I wanted the technical skill. And so I was able to do that. And now it's paying its benefits with regards to health, going to be able to go to the VA and, a second retirement. although I'm still working on some issues with regards to being around burn pits and so forth, and so processing some things with claims. But last thing I would say is that we probably won't get to it on this round, but all of us have had some, as you mentioned, some degree of issues with trying to advance. Lou has his story. Chris has a story. You shared part of his story. There's another part of his story about being stopped by the military police at McGuire. And even in the chaplain service, which I spent the last 19 years as a chaplain assistant, there were issues. In fact, around 1991, the chief of the Air Force chaplain service was a woman, Lorraine Potter, and she was quoted as saying that African-American chaplains were good field officers, but they couldn't do the bigger things of administrative strategic planning and so forth. That's Doctor, you can Google that. And so don't have time to talk about my experiences there, but I'm grateful to have had some models and older brothers to go in the military before me. And I've been working on a couple things to finish writing. One is deal with my experience as a chaplain assistant and what that requires. And also the piece back to Tom's story, because at least 2 brothers out of the 7 had an experience where, the song, ain't no use in going home, Jody got your girl in home, gone. That was part of the experience they had. And it changed their life, the trajectory of their life.
Well,
but
Eric,
it's
on that note, I'm gonna turn the program over to Richard.
Yes, sir.
We only have a couple, like 2 minutes or so.
Right.
And this was a wonderful experience to be able to do this with you all. And as you said, maybe we can do a part 2 and we can share some more of our experiences. We didn't have enough time to do some of the things that we wanted to do. Richard, it's all yours.
Man, this was educational, stimulating, spiritual, all that. It was a wonderful thing. And of course, just you and I talk, Tony, and get a date for part 2. We had talked about a second part, maybe doing athletics, but we could rethink that and see how you want to approach it. But yeah, I think a second part would be great. And just sitting here, listening and joining and learning a lot of things I didn't know, but I know some things. Because I grew up with some of these, so I remember, hey, I'm not just hosting the show. I grew up with some of these brothers. Yes, sir. And didn't grow up with Brother Eric because Eric didn't exist. He was those days. So when I met Eric, first thing I thought I was looking at Tom Jackson, and Eric had that beautiful smile. He was warm, intelligent, and articulate, and we started off doing some dramatic things together.
That's right.
So I've been friends ever since. And Lou, it's just so good to be back in touch with you, brother. So good to be back in touch with Brew. We're talking about growing up with. I mean, we did some things down in the cage that was absolutely wonderful and set a foundation for who we are. I want to say to my listening audience, you're listening to the Jackson family, one of the most prominent families from the city of Chester that have contributed greatly. All people, and then African-American people, because they got past barriers that most of us got past and were able to be successful with life. We're going to look forward to doing another show with these gentlemen and presenting some of the things that they have done and have contributed to society. Now, I'm still in Lebanon, folks. I'm at the Lebanon Valley Market. I still sell African artifacts. We got drums, we got oils, we got original paintings, and we need your support. Some of my friends like to come by and just to say hi and not purchase anything, but if you're looking at a retail business, if we don't sell some things, we die. But I'm enjoying it. I'm 81. God has blessed me with longevity in terms of my life. And also blessed me with a wonderful, wonderful wife.
Amen.
So thank God for her. Thank God for my children. Thank God for me to have friends and brothers who are Jacksons. looking forward to your next show. So we will talk and coordinate it. And thank you again, all of you, for being willing to share personal, intimate things about your life and things that you've done with the public. So God bless you, and may heaven smile upon you and be gracious unto you unto thee. Take care now. So long. Until next
Thank
time.
you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. We thank you for taking out the time to listen. Listen to me sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.